In the heart of Africa lies Sudan, once the continent's largest nation, now split into Sudan and South Sudan. This division, formalized in July 2011, was the result of generations of conflict rooted in identity, faith, resources and power. The north, shaped by the Nile and desert, is predominantly Arab and Muslim. The south, lush and diverse, is home to black African communities with Christian and animist beliefs. These differences became fault lines, fueling decades of marginalization and struggle. For the south, the fight was about survival and self-determination, not just politics. The 2011 split was celebrated as a new beginning, but the scars of division ran deep. The separation created new borders, but the underlying tensions and challenges remained. The story of Sudan's split is not just about geography, it's about people, resilience, and the ongoing quest for peace. Sudan's divide began under colonial rule, when the British governed the North and South separately, deepening cultural and economic rifts. The North developed closer ties with the Arab world, while the South was isolated and neglected. When independence came in 1956, the two regions were abruptly merged, with power concentrated in Khartoum. Southern communities, marginalized and alienated, faced laws that promoted Arabic and Islam, erasing their identities. The South's rich resources, especially oil, were exploited for the benefit of the North, leaving the South impoverished. Economic and political exclusion fueled resentment and set the stage for conflict. The people of the South were not just fighting for recognition, they were fighting for their share of the nation's wealth. The seeds of war were sown in these early years of forced unity and inequality. Independence brought anxiety, not celebration, for the South. The stage was set for a conflict that would last for generations. Tensions erupted into war even before Sudan's independence, with the first civil war starting in 1955. Southern soldiers rebelled, fearing domination by the North, sparking a brutal guerrilla conflict. The Addis Ababa Agreement in 1972 brought a brief, fragile peace, granting the South autonomy. But in 1983, the government revoked this autonomy and imposed Sharia law, igniting a second, even deadlier civil war. The Sudan People's Liberation Army, led by John Garang, fought for a secular, unified Sudan, but years of violence shifted the goal to independence. Both wars devastated the South, killing over 2 million and displacing millions more. Generations grew up amid violence, with communities and infrastructure destroyed. The suffering finally drew international attention, making the status quo untenable. The wars left deep scars, but also a determination in the South to control its own destiny. The only path forward was for the South to choose its own future. The cost was immense, but the hope for peace endured. The world watched as Sudan's tragedy unfolded, demanding change. After decades of war, hope arrived with the 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement. The deal granted the South autonomy and promised a referendum on independence after 6 years. The South faced the daunting task of building a government from scratch with little infrastructure and a traumatized population. Despite the odds, the promise of a referendum kept hope alive. In January 2011, millions voted overwhelmingly for independence. On July 9, 2011, South Sudan was born amid global celebration and local joy. The flag was raised in Juba, symbolizing hard-won freedom. Yet the challenges of nation-building loomed large. The new nation faced poverty, division, and the legacy of war. Independence was a triumph, but also the start of a new, uncertain journey. The world's newest country had to find its footing fast. The dream of peace was real, but fragile. Independence brought hope, but South Sudan was one of the world's least developed nations. Ethnic divisions, suppressed during the war, resurfaced as the new government struggled to unite over 60 groups. Oil, the main resource, became a source of conflict. Reserves were in the south, but pipelines ran north. Disputes led to an oil shutdown in 2012, crippling both economies and deepening mistrust. Political unity unraveled, and in 2013 a power struggle between President Kiir and his deputy Machar sparked a new civil war. This time the violence was South Sudanese against South Sudanese with horrific ethnic dimensions. Meanwhile, Sudan lost most of its oil revenue and faced new rebellions in Darfur and other regions. The split created two troubled nations, both struggling with instability and violence. The promise of peace faded as old wounds reopened. The dream of a better future was quickly overshadowed by new crises. In 2023, Sudan plunged into a new civil war, not against a region, but between rival generals. The Sudanese armed forces, led by General al-Burhan, clashed with the Rapid Support Forces, commanded by Hemeti. Once allies, their power struggle turned Khartoum into a war zone, with fighting spreading nationwide. Darfur suffered renewed ethnic violence, echoing past atrocities. Foreign powers fueled the conflict, turning Sudan into a proxy battleground. Ceasefires failed, and the generals prioritized power over their people's survival. Hopes for democracy, kindled by the 2019 revolution, were crushed. The nation fragmented, with rival factions controlling different regions. Ordinary Sudanese faced fear, displacement and despair. The dream of a unified Sudan seemed more distant than ever. The wars in Sudan and South Sudan have created a humanitarian disaster. By 2025, Sudan faces the world's largest displacement crisis. Over 14 million uprooted, millions more fleeing abroad. Neighbouring countries like Chad and South Sudan struggle to host desperate refugees. Camps overflow, resources are scarce, and famine looms as war disrupts agriculture and aid. In Darfur, famine was declared in 2024, with millions facing catastrophic hunger. The health system has collapsed, leaving people vulnerable to disease. Aid is underfunded and dangerous to deliver as convoys are attacked and workers threatened. The world's attention has drifted, but the suffering is relentless. For millions, daily life is a battle against hunger, disease and fear. The crisis is a silent emergency, costing countless lives. Behind the numbers are real people, families torn apart, dreams shattered. Mothers flee burning villages, students lose their futures, and children grow up in camps, out of school and malnourished. Women and girls face extreme risks, including sexual violence used as a weapon of war. Refugees cross borders, sometimes returning to lands their families once fled, only to find new dangers. The bonds of community are stretched thin as people scatter across the region. Yet, amid despair, there are stories of resilience. Host communities sharing what little they have, aid workers risking their lives, and families striving for normalcy. Acts of kindness and courage shine through the darkness. The suffering is immense, but so is the strength of those who endure. The tragedy is cyclical, but hope persists in small, everyday acts. Even in crisis, humanity endures. As of July 2025, the future of Sudan and South Sudan remains uncertain, with wars and crises ongoing. Yet hope endures in the resilience of ordinary people and local peace builders. The first step to a better future is silencing the guns and ensuring humanitarian access. True peace requires justice, reconciliation and inclusive politics that give every citizen a voice. Local leaders, women, youth, elders are working for peace at the grassroots. The international community must support these efforts, not impose solutions. The story of Sudan and South Sudan is a lesson in the costs of division, but also in the power of human spirit. We must not turn away, but remain engaged and support the quest for peace. The hope for a new dawn, however faint, still burns in the heart of this troubled land. The journey is far from over, but the dream of peace remains alive. In the face of darkness, the human spirit refuses to be extinguished.